right, thanks for joining me on another episode of Why Not Go, the channel dedicated to rock and roll, especially punk and especially the Sex Pistols. Well, we're in November now, and this is a very momentous month, I think, in Sex Pistols history. In just a few days, it will be 50 years from their first performance at the St. Martin's College on Charing Cross Road. I have a very special video on that date, on November 6th, so stay tuned for that one. But since we are in November, I wanted to do a video on what led up to that first gig on November 6, 1975. In my last Sex Pistols video, I did a video on their first rehearsal on August 31st, and I'll put a link to that video. So there wasn't that much time between their first rehearsal with Leiden on August 31st and their first performance on November 6th. It was just a little over 2 months. I mean, that's not that much time. So it was a very interesting 2 months, and it could have been a very different group if things went a different way than they went. So I wanted to do a video on what led up to that first rehearsal. So August 31st, they rehearsed with Leiden, and the rest of the group weren't that impressed, but Malcolm was, and he was impressed with Leiden, and he wanted him to be the singer. And then, so before they got the rehearsal space on Denmark Street, they kind of bounced around between the one in Wandsworth, which was their first rehearsal, and I cover that at that location. They also went to the Crunchy Frog location by the river there in East London, and they also rehearsed in Camden. I don't know where in Camden. So they bounced around a few places until Glenn Matlock saw this ad in Melody Maker on September 13th. So that was just a couple weeks after their first rehearsal, and for this space on Tin Pan Alley at 6 Denmark Street. And Malcolm told Glenn, he said, go ahead and ring them up and offer them £1,000, and we'll see how it goes. The space had been used by the group Badfinger, and then I guess the singer had committed suicide, and so the manager was trying to release to lease the space to someone else. So Malcolm went ahead and secured the deal. He ended up paying £650 and using the rest of the payment by giving Bill Collins, the manager, Sylvain's Fender Rhodes electric piano that he had gotten from Sylvain when Malcolm was their manager earlier in the year. So things really changed after that when they had that location. The rent was £4 a month. £4 a week. And so things really changed after that. They had a place where he could keep his drums set up, where Steve Jones could live. He lived on the second floor, and a place where they could, rehearse. And they rehearsed a lot. I believe they rehearsed almost every day. And because Malcolm really pushed them. He wanted them to start writing new songs. He wanted them to, get to know each other musically. And they weren't working. The only one who was working was Paul Cook. But they rehearsed a lot. And the first song that Steve Jones wrote was 17. And that was their first composition. And they also worked on Did You Know Wrong, which was the Wally Nightingale song. They changed the lyrics for that song. So those were the first two songs that they worked on. And as I said, Malcolm really pressed them to work hard and rehearse as much as possible. And then on September, a little later in the month, I believe they moved into the Denmark studio right around September 20th. And then on September 27th, 1975, Malcolm placed this ad in the Melody Maker. And thanks to my friend and viewer, Andy Biddle, I'll show pictures of the whole newspaper. He has the whole thing, the whole issue of Melody Maker. I think it has a band called the Blue Jays on the cover. And I love this. I love this ad. Looking for a whiz kid guitarist, not older than 20, not worse looking than Johnny Thunders. So yeah, I thought that was funny. So you might ask, well, why were they advertising for a second guitar player when they had Steve Jones, and he was their guitar player. Well, the reason was mainly because Paul Cook was threatening to leave the band. This is according to Paul Gorman's book on Malcolm McLaren. And Paul Cook wasn't, even though they were great friends, he didn't think that Steve Jones' guitar playing was progressing fast enough. And he also didn't think that Lydon's vocals were very good. I think they all thought that. And he had a job at a brewery. He had an apprentice job at a brewery. And so according to Paul Gorman's book, Paul Cook rang Malcolm, and or Malcolm said that Paul Cook rang him and said, I shouldn't waste my money, that he was going to quit. And according to Malcolm, Paul Cook came up with a variety of reasons, including Steve Jones wasn't good enough, Rotten's vocals were awful, and also because of his apprenticeship, he didn't want to throw his career away at the brewery. And so Malcolm didn't want Paul Cook to quit, and so to try to kind of pacify him, he said, look, he had tried to, look, I'll get a second guitarist. He had wanted to get Sylvain. He had already written to him to get him to be the lead guitarist, and he didn't respond, or he responded negatively. So that's when Malcolm said, hey, look, I can't get Sylvain, but we're going to get a second guitarist, a lead guitarist. And so that seemed to kind of pacify Paul Cook, thinking, well, if we get another guitar player, maybe the band will be, better than what he thought it was. And so he placed this ad. I believe a lot of people came to Denmark Street to try out. Again, this was to be the lead guitar player, and I guess Steve Jones was kind of, I don't know if you call it a demotion, but he was going to be the rhythm guitar player. I wonder how he felt about that. I don't know. And so one of the people that came to try out was Mick Jones. I'll show a picture here, probably how he looked at the time. I don't think he had short hair. He had long hair in 1975, and he didn't work out. I'm not sure why, but either Mick Jones didn't want to join them, or they didn't want him. Another person who tried out was Steve New, and Steve New ended up working with being Glenn Matlock's lead guitar player in the Rich Kids. And apparently he was only 17 at this time, and he was a real whiz kid. And Malcolm, or maybe the other members, decided that he was kind of too good, and that he would add too many kind of frills, and he just wasn't the good kind of guitar player that they wanted. So Mick Jones didn't work out. Steve New didn't work out. I believe that a lot of people tried out, but for one reason or another, they didn't. None of the people that tried out was to their liking, and so at that point. Again, this was just, right around September 27th, the end of the month. They'd only been with Lydon a month. But at that point, Paul Cook, I guess, decided that Steve Jones was progressing enough, and even though they couldn't find a lead guitar player, Paul Cook decided to stay with the band and not threaten anymore that he was going to leave. And so it was a really interesting month. And then in October, Malcolm moved out of his flat with Vivian Westwood into the Bell Street apartment of Helen Wellington Lloyd. And I did a video on Bell Street, and I'll put a link to that video in this video. It's a very interesting area. It's not just because of Helen Wellington Lloyd and Malcolm living there and starting the Sex Pistols office there, but the Clash's Joe Strummer used to live around the corner as well. So it's a really interesting area. So at that point, Malcolm was really concentrating on the Sex Pistols, and he thought he could concentrate better if he wasn't living with Vivian. I think he ended up going back to her flat, but they had a tumultuous relationship. And apparently Malcolm said that he was angry with Vivian, but he couldn't remember about what. But Bell Street, he said, provided me with a place where I could concentrate on the new group and ensure they would take a path like none other before them. So Malcolm was very serious about the group and about doing things in an unconventional way and really concentrating and working hard. So Malcolm moved in with Helen Wellington Lloyd in October. I'm sure right around that time he was already trying to get Jamie Reed to come down. I think he was in Scotland to start working on the artwork. And then right around this time as well, the Sable Starr, who used to be with Johnny Thunders, she came into Sex, and she said that things weren't working out that well with the New York Dolls. They had recently broken up, and they recently gotten back together rather, and but things weren't working out, and Johnny Thunders was starting to work with the Heartbreakers. So that gave Malcolm more of another. He got excited again as far as like trying to get Sylvain in the group, in the Sex Pistols. So he wrote a 7-page letter to Sylvain's mother. That was the only address that he had, back in the day when you could only communicate with letters. I guess he didn't have his home phone number. And so he wrote him a 7-page letter and really kind of pleading with him. Again, he had already written to him, pleading with Sylvain to join the Sex Pistols and be the lead guitar player. Malcolm was, when he managed the Dolls, he was closest, I think, to Sylvain. They were very tight, very close. And so he wrote to him. So Malcolm wrote to Sylvain on October 22nd. And so this was only a couple weeks before their first show on November 6th. And he had already written to him, and he's writing to him again because Sable Starr had made it sound like the Dolls weren't really working out, and Sylvain probably was free. And so he wrote a very long letter, a 7-page letter, and he included pictures of the Sex Pistols. I'll show the pictures here. He included a picture of Lydon and also of Steve and Glenn. And it's interesting, on the back he wrote rhythm guitar player on for Steve. So he was saying to Sylvain, you could be the lead guitar player. And then apparently on the back of Lydon's photo, and I'll show it here, he wrote, he can't sing, but he's definitely better than Johansson. So that's funny. So he was really, trying again to get Sylvain to join the Sex Pistols. So I find that interesting. I think it would have been a very different band, and probably not the band that we know and love, because Sylvain, although I've always liked him, but it would have been more of a, I don't know, a New York Dolls kind of band, I think. It just would have been different. But that's what Malcolm wanted, and he really did want Sylvain in the band. In fact, he ends the letter with, look, pack a suitcase, grab your guitar, and come here immediately. I trust you. Let me hear from you again, right away. Okay, Toledo, always sexy, Malcolm. So pack your bags, Toledo, get over here. That's what he wanted. And but it was to no avail. Sylvain turned him down again. I believe he had a solo record deal at that point, and didn't want to leave New York. And yes, they would have been a very different band if Sylvain had been. He probably would have been the leader of the band, since he had so much experience. It probably would have been kind of his band, and maybe he would have even shared vocals with Lydon. But it didn't work out, and I think it worked out for the best, the way that it did work out was with Sylvain turning Malcolm down a second time, and then that was it. And then Glenn got the date at the St. Martin's College on November 6th, because he was going to school there, and they that was their first show 50 years ago this month. And as I said, I'll have a special video on November 6th on the exact day, and I hope you like that one. So I've done a video on Denmark Street, and I can put a link to that one as well. But right now I just want to show the clip where I'm walking from the rehearsal space on Denmark Street around the corner to the front of St. Martin's College, walking the exact same route that they would have done almost 50 years ago, and I get a little emotional at the end. So that ends that part of that ends the video, and I hope you like it. And as I said, in just a few days I'll have another video, I think a very special one, on the exact date of their first show 50 years ago. All right, so they started rehearsing here in September 1975, and then just a couple months later, November 6th, was their first show around the corner. So we're going to do the walk, how they would have, the exact route they would have taken coming out of here, number 6. Again, it was in the back. And coming out of here for their first gig, November 6, 1975, they didn't take their drums or amps, just Glenn took his bass, Steve took his guitar, and they would have come this way. So let's do it. We're gonna do the walk.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah.
And as we go by here, again, we're going to go by the place that used to be a cafe where David Bowie would hang out with Mark Bolan. Okay, I'm going to hold it just because the vocals won't hear me. All right, so that's where Mark Bolan and David Bowie would hang out, hoping to get into the music industry. Following the Sex Pistols here. (1975) November 6th. It's really not far. A lot of new stores here, TJ Maxx. Walking with the Sex Pistols. I think it looked a lot different in 1975. There was no TJ Maxx. I know that.
In the college days.
Yeah, but that's right where the Foyles bookstore is. Yeah. Is the so they didn't have far to go. All right. And there we have it. The first show. Now apparently the St. Martin's School of Art is moved, though the sign still says it there. That's too bad. There should be a plaque, of course, but there isn't. And apparently the community room where they played is not accessible anymore. It's offices or flats up there. But that's where it all started, November 6, 1975. All right, so it was a short walk. So the audience that night was Malcolm, of course, Andrew Tchaikovsky, his accountant, who later did the Roxy Club, of course, and Susan Carrington, and you just hold that for me so I can read it. Helen Wellington Lloyd, Jordan, Michael Collins, David Harrison, who I guess actually auditioned for the band, and Sebastian Conran, who was the part of the Conran Habitat Empire. Now the Pistols arrived just with guitar and bass, and they obviously opened up for Bazooka Joe, and I'll show the picture here. And they opened up for Bazooka Joe, and of course everybody probably knows this. The singer Adamant was the bass player in Bazooka Joe, and he immediately quit Bazooka Joe. I find that so interesting. When people saw the Sex Pistols, they kind of quit what they were doing. They used Bazooka Joe's equipment, so they just came with bass and guitar. But after the sound check, Steve Jones didn't like their amp, so he would have gone back around the corner, and then he would have come back with his amp. So they did. Steve Jones did use his own amp. So yeah. So and then about 5 weeks after the St. Martin show, that's when they started attracting the Bromley contingent. So none of the Bromley contingent were at this show. Simon Barker of the Bromley contingent, he attended their 6th performance, which was at the Ravensbourne College in Chislehurst, Kent. And then he encouraged friends from his home into a neighboring suburb to follow him to successive gigs. So the Bromley contingent were not at this show. This was just very small crowd. Who was at this show was Viv Albertine, and also Rory Johnston. He was the guy, he was their LA rep, actually their American rep, close friend of Malcolm's. And so Rory Johnston, the one who gave me the jacket to give to Steve Jones, he was at this show. Yeah, so none of the Bromley contingent were at this show. It was a small group of people, obviously Jordan and Malcolm and Vivian. But who was at the show was Rory Johnston, who, if you saw my Sex Pistols on tour video, he's the one that gave me the leather jacket to give to Steve Jones, Rory Johnston. He became their American rep. So he was a close friend of Malcolm's. So I read in Viv Albertine's book, which I love, Viv Albertine of the Slits. She said that the day of the gig, Rory said, "Do you want to come with me to check out Malcolm's new band, a band that he's managing?" And she said, "Sure." And then she asked Mick Jones, "Do you want to come along? Malcolm's got like a new band, and apparently it's supposed to be interesting." And Mick Jones said no. He said, "I don't want to just go watch another band. I want to work on my own band." And then Viv Albertine also said in her book that she said, he seemed kind of jealous. She said he already seemed kind of jealous. Maybe because they were managed by Malcolm McLaren, I don't know. But she said he already seemed kind of jealous and like he didn't want to, he wanted to concentrate on his own band. He didn't care. So she was interested. So she went with Rory Johnston, the guy that I knew in LA. It's funny how things are so circular. She went with Rory to see them. And I'm just going to read a little passage from her book. And you can, we'll pan over back to the St. Martin's College. And this is so great when she writes. They were so game-changing. She said, all the things I was embarrassed about, Johnny Lydon made it into a virtue. He's unapologetic about who he is, where he comes from, proud of it even. He's not taking the world's lack of interest as confirmation that he's wrong and worthless. I look up at him, twisting and yowling, and realize it's everyone else who's wrong, not him. How did he make that mental leap from musically untrained, state school educated council estate boy to standing on stage in front of a band? I think he's brave, a revolutionary. He's sending a very powerful message. The message anyone can ever transmit, be yourself. So she knew when she saw this gig, she knew it was something important. I'm sorry, I get emotional. And Stuart Goddard, Adam Ant, he knew too. He quit Bazooka Joe. I have no idea what they sounded like. He quit Bazooka Joe right after seeing the Sex Pistols, much very similar to the singer in The Clash, Joe Strummer, because he was in the band the 101ers, and as soon as he saw the Sex Pistols, he quit the 101ers because he knew he wasn't on the right track. And then he ended up joining a band with Mick Jones, and of course that band was The Clash. So I think that happened a lot. People that saw the Sex Pistols, like Adam Ant, if they quit what they were doing because they knew you wanted to do something similar that the Sex Pistols were doing. So there's no plaque, but we're honoring it today. 109 Charing Cross Road, where music history was never the same. So I did this video because I've cried now. So let's just, I'll be seeing ya. Thanks for watching. And we'll just pan into St. Martin's.